Because of the following special broadcast, The Lucy Show and The Andy Griffith Show will not be presented this evening.
Please support the Word Balloon podcast by going to patreon.com/wordballoon. Become a part of the League of Word Balloon listeners. That's patreon.com/wordballoon. This episode of Word Balloon is brought to you by Ithacon, April 5th and 6th at Emerson Suites on the Ithaca College campus in Ithaca, New York. Saturday, April 5th and Sunday, April 6th. Ticket prices are $25 with kids admission free. Tickets are available at ithacon.org. That's ITHACON.org. Among the guests, Don McGregor of Black Panther fame, Chris Condon, featured in Ultimate Wolverine and Green Arrow, Matt Bors from Ahoy's Toxic Avenger, Mike Gold, known for Green Arrow, Warlord, and Wasteland, and the legendary Louise and Walter Simonson. There'll be cosplay, gaming, and kids' activities. And Ithacon is offering swag bags for the first 250 attendees that buy tickets. These overstuffed swag bags offer $20 to $50 values in comic books and more. Come see all the fun at Ithacon April 5th and 6th at Emerson Suites on the Ithaca College campus in Ithaca, New York. For more details and tickets, come to ithacon.org. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress with you. Happy to welcome Dean Haspiel back. And for the first time, Vito Delsante. Nice to meet you, Vito, and great to see you, Dean.
Thank you.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing great. Now, we mentioned Ithacon as we were starting the show. Dean will be at Ithacon. Vito, I don't know if you're going to Ithacon or not.
I unfortunately will be taking, not unfortunately, I won't be going. Unfortunately, I won't be going. I will be taking my son to see Minecraft.
I completely respect that. That's very fine. Wonderful. That's great. That's good.
I'm actually speaking. You mentioned cosplay in the opening there. I'm actually going to be cosplaying Dean Haspiel at Ithacon.
Really? How come you're not going to show up as the Red Hook? Because
God,
I mean, come on, man.
Stop it right there.
Come on. I think that's a clue.
Look at that ass.
That's true. There you go. That's America's ass.
That's America's ass, right?
It's
at least Red Hook's ass, but sure. The last email I got before we started doing this podcast was Jen, my girlfriend, Jen Ferguson, who's a painter artist, is actually going to do a really cool thing I'll tell you about in a second. But she, at the con, what's up? She sends me an email about the hotel saying they have a pool and a hot tub. So, I might have to rock that hot tub. But last time I brought Jen with me, which was our first experience at the con, which was so much fun. She, didn't know what to bring because she doesn't really do comic books. She's a painter and does funny little monsters and stuff like that. And so a lot of the students were coming up to us and checking out my stuff, but they were drawn to her because of these cute little. She would try to draw Yoda, and it was like a disaster. But the kids loved it because it was just so beautifully naive in so many ways. So she was just telling me the other night she wants to create a menu where she'll draw you a monster for $20, but the menu will have all kinds of options of what you might want on that, how many eyes, teeth, a tail, I don't know, whatever, a horn.
Monster a la carte.
Basically, monster a la. That's brilliant. I'm going to. So I was like, so you're creating a menu, basically. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, you're going to kill. You're going to kill here. I wish I could think that way.
That's a great idea. Absolutely, man.
Pretty
I've always seen, okay, this is a 5x7 sketch, an 11x17 sketch. those kind of, and more than one character, those kind of options.
Yeah.
But absolutely, create your own monster. I love it. Monster.
Oh my God! This sweet young girl came up and asked her for a flash, and she's like, "What's that?" I'm like, and I looked on the phone, and what she produced was like this geriatric looking. I don't even know what it was. There's no way he could run. Not really, like. And the kid loved it so much. And again, it just taught me. I was like, you got to be really open to not caring. I think when you're an artist and you quote know how to draw, there's shackles put on your hands because of that,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Jen doesn't know how to draw, but she has such a free spirit in how she draws that I'm super jealous of that. Anyway, she'll be at the show.
Very nice.
It'll be
Are you doing any panels, Dean?
I am doing a panel, and oh gosh, did the fellas tell you what it was? Because I did get an email about it.
Maybe Ed is watching. That's the Ithacon person that's chiming in on Facebook.
Oh, that was Ed. So I think it's gonna be me, Don Simpson, Mike Gold, possibly Walter Simonson. I think Walt Simonson, and something to do with like comics and characters from the 1980s, from like A to Z. Give me an A-list character to like Zot or something like that.
Sure. Zot. Loud.
And funny because like I'm thinking, well, Don Simpson's famous for Megaton Man and everything he's done. Walt Simonson was doing Thor at the time, That's the panel. Okay. and I technically, even though in 1985 I was an assistant to, as I've said before, to Walter Simonson, Howard Chaykin, Bill Sienkiewicz. That was in 1985. In 1987, I co-created a character called The Verdict that was published by Eternity Comics and written by a Kentucky writer. He was in Kentucky at the time, named Martin Powell. So I remember like going into St. Mark's Comics on St. Mark's Street in Manhattan, and it was on the second floor at the time, and going and seeing my comic on a rack, it made me feel like a professional. Like it was insane to for that to happen, So technically I did create a character in the 1980s. So, and then the 1990s and everything else came along. So,
Sure. When I was writing boxing articles and covering fights for Boxing Illustrated, I had the same feeling when that first magazine came out and I saw my stuff. I'm like, all right, I'm a sports writer. I'm Oscar Madison. Absolutely, man. 100%. Yep.
So Jen, her favorite TV show is The Odd Couple, and we've been watching The Odd Couple from the first episode. And order, right?
Oh, yeah, great.
So I mean, just like anything that's fictionalized, how accurate would you say is Klugman as a sports writer? Maybe not the personality, but the
the setup and everything. Yeah. No, I know plenty of print guys from the Tribune and the Sun-Times from my years of doing sports radio and stuff. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd visit them. I mean, it was more, it wasn't offices. It was really more, the newsroom, like almost like a bullpen, and just a bunch of cubicles and typewriters and stuff. Like I always say, and I love this movie, and people are kind of 50-50 on it, Continental Divide, the Belushi movie.
Oh, I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
With Blair Brown, and he basically is doing a version of our Jimmy Breslin. Mike Royko was our Jimmy Breslin, and really knew how to write about the city and just what drives him nuts about modern society and all that stuff. And yeah, in fact, Belushi knew Royko, and Royko really loved him and everything, and they had kind of a older, younger kind of, friendship and everything. So yeah, that movie, and I want to say Larry Kasdan wrote the screenplay for it, and it was an Amblin film from the early 80s, like, maybe 2 years before Belushi died. And it was a romantic comedy. It's him and Blair Brown.
Belushi was from Chicago too, right?
Yeah. Wheaton, but no, you're right. Absolutely, man. No, we all, even if we grew up in the burbs, just for shorthand. Hey, where are you from?
Same thing here. Like Pittsburgh is about, I just drove to downtown Pittsburgh to pick up my wife from the train. And I live in a small town about 40 minutes away. But
which town?
It's called Katanning.
Okay.
It's super Jesus, Dean, with that lightning, you got to knock it off, man.
Dean is live from the Mad Scientist laboratory, and he's got the kites out generating the energy so that his monster will come to life.
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's like rumbling over here right now.
Can't hear it, but we see the lightning bolts. I mean, it's pretty awesome, man.
So I hope you don't mind if I light up. My wife just brought me these.
Oh no, man, no, Christ! These. Even if it was weed, I would be. You're fine, Vito. So don't sweat.
Stallion.
You know, so that's all right. It's okay, man.
John, just like an old timey sports writer. Look at me.
Exactly.
You like the Belushi. So you were talking about like your Jimmy Breslin, and you reminded me, and I think it was Jonathan Ames or another writer friend named Tim Hall. I can't remember who told me about this book, but I bought it. I have not read it yet, but I've heard, and I need to look at the internet for a second. Sure. I heard that this book was incredible. It's called A Fan's Notes by Frederick Exley. Do you know this?
No.
Really?
No.
Oh, I believe it's about, I think it's about a sports writer, but it's also very autobiographical or semi-autobiographical here I'm reading. But I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like a famous book that might have had something to do with sports writing, but it veers into like the Americana of life. And I'm trying to think when it was written. Oh, 1968.
Oh, wow. So, I love old journalism, collections of articles or biographies or autobiographies.
Right.
And in fact, Mike Gold and I were talking about another great New York writer, A.J. Liebling, who dubbed Chicago the second city. And it wasn't a compliment. It absolutely was a very funny knock on Chicago. And but we've really embraced it. And you guys may know that the improv theater that is very famous here in Chicago is called the Second City. And it's and it's got improv comedy born here. Again,
and of course we've discussed in the past the movie based on the book Fat City that John Huston directed, right? You know about that, about the boxing?
I when I first met George Foreman, when I was covering his comeback, this is early 90s. I brought it. We'd done a phone interview at the very beginning of his comeback, which was amazing. And the only reason why I bring it up is obviously with George's passing, he's been on my mind. And I really did cover his comeback through the whole period, both in radio and in print. And then also got to meet him several times at fights and things. But when I first met him, I brought my copy of Fat City. I'm like, would you autograph this? He's like, this is really one of my favorite books. I'm like, I'm not surprised. It's one of the best fiction boxing books. So and a great movie. Great movie.
Vito, have you seen that movie or do you know it?
I know it, but I've never seen it. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely something I want to check out because especially I really John, did you ever read the book The Devil and Sonny Liston?
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's Tachis, right? Nick Tachis, right?
Yeah. I love that book. And like the boxing, like it's funny, back we're looking at like maybe 15 years ago at this point, maybe longer. But I was working on a JSA classified story for DC that starred Wildcat, and I wanted to really bring the boxing, make it more prevalent. Dean was supposed to draw it. Then we ended up getting Eric White. We kind of agree. He ended up doing a cover for it, which is a beautiful cover. It's got Stargirl as the ring card girl and Ted like this. It's amazing, and it's sitting in a drawer. It should get printed at some point in my lifetime because it's a really good story. And
they didn't put it out, Vito?
No, they never did. They canceled the book. They canceled the book before it got scheduled.
Okay,
and I think once my Superman Confidential story that became Superman 676 came out, they were like, "Don't hire this guy, please."
Why? Oh my God! Vito, I remember when that Superman issue came out, and that's one of the reasons why I'm like, I think I've had Vito on, man.
No,
but I didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't well received by editorial higher ups because I was working in retail at the time. I think I don't really have an answer, but it was a very weird thing that came about. The Superman Confidential story that I had originally pitched, again with Dean as the artist, was going back to boxing. Even how did Superman learn how to fight? and it was going to be revealed that it wasn't Batman, it wasn't Wonder Woman, it was Hawkman. And Hawkman, being that he has had all these different lives,
yes,
Hawkman actually knew the Kryptonian martial art and then taught that to Superman. So that was going to be the story. But then what happened was my editor, Mike Siglane, who's now over at Disney.
I know Mike.
Working on a lot of the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Mike had called me and he said, "Hey, I hate to do this, but we have a real emergency. We need a one-issue Superman story. Can you write it?" I was like, sure. And the whole reason why was because they were trying to sign Julian Lopez to an exclusive contract, and Marvel was offering him like something right away. And they were like, if we can give him something this weekend, we'll be able to sign him to an exclusive. So I was like, I'm your guy, Mike, no matter what. So that's how my Superman Confidential story about Solomon Grundy and Alan Scott came about. And then Superman Confidential, I'm going to name names for the first time ever. Dan Diaz saw my name on something and he said, Superman Confidential is a book for superstars. This guy here is not a superstar. Pull it.
Damn.
It got pulled. I went into a funk. A couple months later, there was a Superman story by my buddy Keith Champagne that was solicited with the guy on the cover of Action Comics #1 who's doing this, like running.
Oh yeah. Who's running away when Superman is lifting the car? Sure.
Yeah, Keith wrote a story about that guy, and what happened was around the same time, DC had lost a lawsuit regarding Action Comics #1. Which I've never confirmed, but I'm pretty sure is the reason why Grant Morrison's reimagining New 52 Superman had a totally different origin.
Interesting.
They couldn't do anything with Action Comics anymore.
Wow.
So because that was Action Comics #1, Keith's book got pulled. Matt Idelson running down the hallways. Does anybody have a Superman story for me to put? Because, trains got to run on time.
Absolutely.
Mike Siglane, to this day, my guy, just goes, I got one. It was written, drawn, penciled, inked, colored, but only needed to be lettered. So we looked at it. We said, all right, when's the book coming out? Coming out around Memorial Day. I'll retweak some of the dialogue. And then never again. Never again at DC.
Man, and I'm so sorry to hear that. And I know other creators that have not had good experiences at not only DC, but also Marvel. And no, I hate hearing stories like that, man. And also, listen, go ahead. Well,
I was going to say the nice thing about it is you get kind of compliments not only on the work but as your work ethic. And I was introduced to Jack Morelli from Archie Comics, the famous longtime. Are any of us famous really? But longtime letterer up at Archie. By Mark Chiarello. Mark Chiarello was introducing me to Jack, and he goes,
former art director of DC. Yeah.
And Mark goes, "This is Vito Delsante. Vito, this is Jack Morelli. Vito is the most talented writer we can't hire." And I'll take that every day of the week. That's a great compliment.
I hear you, man. Well, I was gonna, and there are others that I could think of, but I had to ask you about your animal stay, your comic book hero.
Yes, Trey. Yeah.
Great design. Very cool.
Yeah, that is
that?
Sean Isaacs, who's currently probably making Dino jealous because he's drawing Challengers of the Unknown for DC right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, he's working with Cantwell.
Yeah.
And
he just came off of a run on Green Arrow. That was very well received. I think it was only supposed to be 6 issues, and it got bumped because it was doing so well. I think Josh Williamson wrote that as well. But Sean and I, it's very funny. Sean and I met on DeviantArt, and I was just a fan of his art, and we both bonded over our love of Aquaman and Nightwing, of all things. And I was working on Stray with a different artist. That artist took about 3 years to produce a full issue, and I was like, I can't do this. I apologized to him. I said, I loved your work. I'll always support your work. He ended up never doing anything in comics as a result, I guess. But I was like, I know this is my shot. I'm going to take it. I'm not going to use your designs. I'm going to have Sean redo everything. And Sean based it on both of our dogs at the time. I had a pit bull, so if you see the ears, the floppy ears, and he had, I forget the type of dog, but the orange ring there around his neck, his dog had that. So he incorporated both of our dogs into that design.
That's excellent, man. And what did you? What did Stray come through? Like which publisher, or did you do it yourself?
We funded it on Kickstarter, and then we got picked up by Action Lab.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why we got picked up by Action Lab is because I'm a really good friend of the artist Ray Anthony Height, who did Midnight Tiger. Okay. And they were very hesitant to take it on because they're like, well, they kind of look alike, you know, and we have to check with Ray, and Ray's like, I don't care. You put this book out. Like, he's like, this is a good book. You know, you guys don't know what you're getting. And the rest is history.
That's cool, man. No, honestly, great idea. And I don't know. You guys are doing a podcast now, and we'll certainly talk about that in a second. But might we see a Stray Red Hook crossover?
Close. We are going to introduce Purple Heart, which was my end of New Brooklyn. We're going to introduce Purple Heart into the Stray universe after the next story arc. But I think Dean and I should do something at some point with our characters, just because they look like not similar, but like they have that kind of like weirdo ears, you know, like I think it'd just be fun to see them kind of parlay off of each other.
Yep. I know. I don't mean to keep throwing your face up there, Dean, but that's the image of Red Hook that I grabbed was you and the Red Hook as well.
And I look like an idiot, but that's okay.
You look like an idiot.
I'm used to that. But no, that's one of the things that, like, for a couple of years now, I'll talk to Vito and a couple other creators. I mean, you know, Brooklyn is lousy with cartoonists. We have too many cartoonists, right? So, but I'll talk to Vito since I've known him forever and have collaborated with Vito. In fact, I was his first published artist through Batman Adventures, was it?
Batman Adventures, Volume 2, Number 9.
He wrote was it 5 or 6 pages?
It was 5. Yeah.
5-page, great Bruce Wayne story about him doing therapy. It's called The Couch.
Oh, and, wow.
Do you have it? Do you have a copy of it?
I have.
I can zoom in if you do.
The trade paperback.
Oh, right.
Which was like a digest. This is actually the Spanish one that I grabbed. That's funny. But cool. Here is our opening splash page.
So far.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
The couch.
And it was. I was trying to draw on that kind of like, you know, whatever Batman Adventure style, which wasn't really my thing, but I did the best I could. But what I was going to try and say though is that in terms of like characters crossing over, right? I just feel like, you know, we can have more of that more than ever with independent superheroes and independent, you know, creators can meet at the crossroads of a corner or a street or a narrative, you know. Yeah. And like, I don't know if you know Charlie McKelvey, who has Zion Press, and he does a comic called Spider Squirrel and Trash Panda and a bunch of characters that also Vito's involved in. In fact, you're doing a new comic with Zion, right? Aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of God Quest.
Okay.
It's called Milestone God Quest. We had to change the name to avoid the DC confusion, but yeah, sure. It's one of his characters. It's very weird when you're working on like Dean calls them franchise comics. You understand that you're working on a comic book for a company that, you know, has a long history, maybe Batman, Captain America, etc. And Charlie asked me to write this comic of his character, and it's a little bit daunting in a lot of ways because this is a character that doesn't have that history, and you're given free rein to kind of play with that character's history. And you also have like when you're doing the franchise stuff, you have to be careful with what you do because you can't break the toys. You know, the toys are there, you know, for the next guy.
Yeah.
But Charlie's like, you can break the toys all you want. You know, it's very, like I said, it's freeing, but it's very daunting at the same time.
No, I get it. That's absolutely.
Well, like you said, like there's no continuity necessarily. There's no what are you writing? What are you basing it on, right? Except for a premise, right? In some ways, So
I mean,
but
we're
that
establishing our continuity, but yeah, like there's nothing that anybody has to, go back.
It's not as
30 years
sacred.
even.
Yeah, it's not as
Yeah.
sacred as Spider-Man's backstory or Superman's backstory.
Right.
Sure.
although speaking of Spider-Man,
Yes.
I woke up to a text from a friend.
Hold on.
Where's my-
Zooming in, Vito.
There you go.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Oh,
That's,
great design too.
Marcus Williams from Tuskegee Heroes is the guy.
Oh, very cool. Oh,
did
wow.
the art on the cover there. He did the cover art, but Ariel Medell, who worked on Evil Ernie, he did the interiors.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Dean. Continue your story.
I'm actually looking for the text right now. So I woke up to a text basically. It said, "The identity of the all-new Venom confirmed to keep this relevant." And I was like, "What? I don't care. Wait, who's Venom? Like, I didn't read."
Who's got
Venom.
the symbiote now? Yeah.
So
who was ballsy enough to wake you up to that text? That's what I want to know.
Or I'll say it was Chris Miscavige. So Chris Miscavige texted me, and I wrote to that headline. I wrote, "I can't. ... Like, I don't care. Like, I can't. Right."
Yeah.
And then he wrote, "Creative teams in the future dialogue. Quote, so yeah, remember when I was Venom for 16 issues? Crazy, right?" And I wrote comics, right?
For
and
real.
It's like, it's so true, man. It's like, what can we do to get somebody to spend $4 or $5, right? Like,
yeah.
We're gonna turn. Was it Mary Jane Watson?
It's Mary
Now
Jane's going to
Venom?
be Venom. Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Okay. Honestly, boys, I will be honest, and I've even said this to Dave Michelini on a panel when it was just me and him. I'm like, I got to be honest, man. I didn't mind Venom when it first came out as a villain, but then when they made him an anti-hero, I'm just like, yeah, too much Venom. And then when they and like an idiot, I'm like, and the same goes for Carnage. I'm like, good Christ, we had Venom. Do we really need a Carnage? And Dave goes, yeah, I created Carnage too. I'm like, Jesus, man. And really, I was exasperated. I'm like, it was these kind of fucking 90s comics that I'm like, this is like, I don't care. And it really took Marvels and Kingdom. It took Marvels and Kingdom Come to start to pique my interest again. And then when Kevin Smith was doing Daredevil, and I heard, it's kind of Frank Millery. I'm like, well, I loved Frank's run on Daredevil. Maybe I'm back. And then that's when Bendis was doing Ultimate Spider-Man, and Brubaker and Rucka were doing Batman. And I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. And even Rucka wrote that novel adaptation of the No Man's Land story.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. I think I was flying to cover a boxing match. And at the airport, I'm like, oh, and I read the back cover and I'm like, oh, it sounds like a cool story. I'll read this book. And I immediately became a Rucka fan and stuff. So that's what got me in. But yeah, man, no. And really, I hate when they take great street level side characters like Foggy Nelson or Mary Jane, you name it. And obviously not in the case of Foggy, but when they made Lana Lang Superwoman, I'm like, leave Lana alone. She's great the way she is. And these heroes need street level characters that they trust to get in their face and go, like, this is the greatest thing about Foggy. Matt, you're fucking up.
Yeah.
You're not doing it right. I don't know how to, it's me, and I'm only going to talk straight to you. You're fucking up. And it's like, those are the people. And like Lois can get in Clark's face and be like, no, dummy. And I love that about Lois. And same with Lana, although I kind of miss the triangle. I understand, and I don't mind them being married, but I'll admit I miss the triangle because, again, Lana, that was his first love. And again, she knew him and stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of weird what they're doing with Lana these days, but that's
very Archie Andrews, like in a lot of ways.
Betty and Veronica.
A lot of these superhero comics were copying. But speaking of copying, like, isn't Carnage just basically a cut and paste, of Venom? And again, Venom was after my Spider-Man reading comics time, and let me ask you this: the movies. He's a goofball, right? With Tom Hardy kind of like navigating him. Is that in the comics as well? That he's kind of like...
No, Eddie's just, hated Peter and everything. Eddie Brock, the original Venom.
The Eddie Brock.
Feel free, Vito, if you know more.
I was going to say,
again, I kind of ignored it.
I am probably one of the rare few people that enjoyed that first Venom movie. Like it is just there's a space in our industry for stupid things. And when I say stupid, I mean things that you can turn your brain off to.
I'm happy.
One of the things I point to that I unabashedly adore is Mark Miller's Nemesis, which is basically Batman if he were a bad guy.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple premise. It's so dopey, but like in a good way. Like it's just something that you can turn your brain off to, read, and just like if you're looking for Shakespeare, you're reading the wrong thing. It's like watching professional wrestling and expecting ballet. Like you're not going to get. My daughter's looking at it.
You're looking for Shakespeare, read Stan Lee.
Yeah. Well, yeah, read Stan Lee Thor comic. But
Silver Surfer, yeah.
But the first Venom movie is great, and I will not apologize for liking it.
I understand. Yeah, I was going to say your daughter might need you for something. And by the way, I have no problem with her being in the background. That's excellent. So
no, she's doing her homework. He was just
no. I respect that. That's all good. So, Dino,
it's 4. 2 + 2 = 4.
She can't hear you, dude.
Leave the kid alone. Absolutely, man. Kid's got a homework crisis. I respect
she's
that.
Smart enough to not listen to Dean anyway. She knows.
Hey.
She's known Dean since she was a baby.
I have feelings,
Ed thought it might be, and he's saying, is that the enchanting Michelle in the background?
No,
that's your wife.
That's the even more enchanting Sadie.
Atta girl, Sadie. Very cool. Nah, it's cool, Sadie. Don't sweat it, buddy.
But just going back to Venom, so what I was going to try to say is these characters evolve like Deadpool, right? Like Deadpool wasn't the wisecracking kind of Looney Tune Bugs Bunny character that he became, right?
Right.
There was a little bit of him, I think, with Liefeld's original New Mutants run, where he was just kind of a smarmy assassin, but not where he had 3 different word balloons to kind of
breaking the fourth wall and all that.
Right. I think that came way after Wade wrote him and way after.
Well,
Joe Kelly too. Yeah.
But I feel like one of the first Marvel characters to break the fourth wall wasn't that She-Hulk under the John Byrne run.
Great run. Yeah, great run.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, and I liked a lot about the She-Hulk Marvel TV show. And I love the casting of Tatiana Maslany. I think. I mean, I was a fan of hers from Orphan Black. So when they announced it, I'm like, that's great. And I'm hearing, I don't know if she was among the director's chair reveals.
She wasn't.
Oh, okay.
No,
Vito, I wonder.
Guys, there's going to be more chairs.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Chris Evans was already confirmed that he would be in the movie, but under what role, we don't know.
Well, Vito, I actually heard they had a test screening of the new FF movie, and they showed the post-credit scene. It's out there on the internet, so I can kind of tell you because Chris Evans was in this scene.
Wow!
So the story's out there, and do you want me to reveal or no?
No, I'm definitely knowing that is good. I know now I know enough, but yeah, okay. I'm good. I'm good right now. I'm very excited for FF, so I really
and as am I, and Thunderbolts, and Doomsday, and Secret War. And that said, it's like, oh, I'm so disappointed. So and so's not in Doomsday, and it's like, Secret War is going to be the following year, and you don't want them to, you don't want them to blow their load.
Spoil it for them to spoil the day of, right? So
and honestly, I'm kind of mad that they revealed as much data, and also the way they did it. I forget who I was talking to. It was Mitch from Terrificon. I'm like, what happened to Kevin Feige being on a stage, or even James Gunn when he was first announcing the slate of the DC projects he wanted to make as TV and film?
A 5-hour live stream of chairs.
And it worked.
Oh no, yeah.
Oh, it didn't work for me. I thought it was stupid as hell.
But in general, people ate it up, is what I'm saying.
Well, I think they ate up the information, but the presentation, it's like, God bless you if you stuck around for 5 hours. I heard what was happening, and I'm like, yeah, I'll wait for the recap. That's where a reporter comes in.
Who knew that the Avengers Doomsday casting chairs, whatever you want to call it, was the antidote to TikTok? The 5-second story.
That's true. Yeah, and really, Dean, that's a good point. Maybe it's built for TikTok and tiny.
It was like a Yule log announcement.
Oh, good analogy.
By the way, mentioning Yule logs, and I didn't realize this until a friend of mine. I used to do overnight traffic reporting on one of my last broadcast jobs, and my producer, instead of putting the U log up, they have Darth Vader burning at the end of Jedi, and it's perpetual. And so instead of that's the Christmas Yule log for the Star Wars fans is burning Darth Vader. Cracked me up. That was in Force Awakens when you saw that burnt out helmet of Vader's. What a great Easter egg that really was not used beyond that image in the first movie. And what a waste, because and honestly, I was kind of hoping in either Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker that we would have a Force Ghost appearance of possibly Anakin, but I would have been happier with a Vader ghost. Because, you must learn your you be your destiny or whatever, Kylo Ren.
But the problem with that is that Vader died on the light side, so he wouldn't have jived with what Ben Solo, Kylo Ren.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Well, it could have been the Emperor. It could have been the Emperor fucking with him. Who knows?
Sure. So what I was going to say about that live stream, though, is that when you think about it, there are channels on YouTube where people watch for 5 hours doing nothing but writing down names and like feigning excitement, and they got paid for it.
Yeah.
Like that's their job. Like that's the scam right there, man. I want that job.
Eric says, after what they've done with Thor and his world, I find it hard to be excited about with any MCU stuff anymore. Well, I hear you, man. Love and Thunder was a real letdown, especially as much as I love Taika Waititi and then all of his movies. I mean, Jojo Rabbit is insane, and all of his stuff is incredible. But yeah, Love and Thunder really did kind of suck. But as I always say, both companies, they're one great movie away from correcting past errors.
Oh, sure.
I mean, Deadpool Wolverine was kind of more of a goodbye to the Fox X-Men continuity more than a real MCU film.
It was also fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I think even though I was praising dumb entertainment, like it's not something that you could immediately shut your brain off to, because there were some interesting, like anchor beings, and, like the idea of that. There's some interesting concepts in there, but I still think it was just that kind of, let's just go in and have fun and not worry about too much, even though they're presenting something new to the greater Marvel cinematic universe.
Did you guys see Brave New World, the Cap movie?
I did.
Mackie?
Yes.
I got to be honest. I was disappointed, and I felt bad for Anthony Mackie. A, he deserved a better movie, and B, I'm sorry. You can give him the adamantium suit or vibranium suit rather, and explain how the suit kind of makes him stronger and stuff. Bullshit. I'm sorry. I should have taken the serum. No. I'm Bucky. You're Captain America because you're you. Wrong. Take the goddamn serum. I'm sorry. I loved Isaiah Bradley being. We'll get to you at the end, possibly 90, and still kicking ass because he had the serum. I'm sorry. That's my feelings. Feel free, Dean.
So going back to the Thor comment and the MCU thing, and I am super forgiving to all those Marvel movies. I actually enjoyed them all. I don't know why. I'm like the 12-year-old that can't believe they're making
right.
So that's talk about like stupid.
Oh, yeah.
No. Although I think it might have been your podcast, John, that when sometimes when I remember that scene in Avengers Endgame when Captain America is about to die in battle with Thanos, and he straps on that part of that shield that's left, and he's like, basically, I can do this all day.
I can do this all day. Absolutely.
He is going to die. He is going to die, and he's going to die. And you hear on your left, I'm on your left. That kills
great moment
every time.
Great moment.
I mean, that whole sequence with the hammer and everything. Like I don't get that. Like even when I watch it now, I don't get what Dean is saying about like I can do this all day. I think it's more, I'm the last soldier standing. I'm the only thing left to keep this guy from. And that even now I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because it's such a powerful moment.
Absolutely. And I love Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, and I think he's done nothing but great things with that character. I gotta be, and I don't mind when Sam is Cap in the comics because Steve is still around. I don't know, man. Right now, and he was just whipping that shield around in Brave New World like Steve, and I'm like, I'm not buying it. Go ahead.
But two things I was going to just say. Basically, it was a Hulk sequel. Basically, with
100% it was
America stuff in it, and that's fine. And it was whatever and whatever. They just didn't make it a Hulk sequel, more than a Captain America story.
Yeah.
But to me, the takeaway for the movie, from me, what I wanted to see a movie of. I can't remember the name of the character, but the older black guy.
Yeah, Isaiah Bradley. Yeah.
Oh my God. They're the way that guy, the soul that comes through his body and his eyes and his heart, and the little, the amount that he was in it was more than a little,
But they could have used him a lot more, I think. Yeah.
Oh my God. Or just
Carl Lumley, man. That actor is electric.
Unbelievable.
And even, they kind of not all of it, but a lot of what they put in Brave New World was covered in the Falcon and Winter Soldier miniseries that streamed. Mm-hmm. And yet, no, Carl is amazing. And I've had one opportunity to interview him. We did a table read of the Justice League cast with Susan Eisenberg.
I want your life now.
Vito, seriously, I've been doing this for 20 years, and every year there's a handful of episodes like, I cannot believe this is happening.
Yeah.
And it was great because Carl wasn't doing a lot of cons, if any, and Susan really convinced. But this was during COVID, so we had everybody on a Zoom, and it was just great. Kevin was on as talking about Batman, and it was a couple years before he passed away. And we had Michael Rosenbaum, and we had everybody, and even Andrea Romano, the voice director.
Yeah.
But it was so great, Carl, and not only he's so well cast as Isaiah Bradley, and that original story, Truth, from 20 years ago or 25 years ago.
It was Robert Morales and Kyle Baker, right?
You got it, man. You got it. I want it. Well, and I mean, did you guys hear? Forgive me, Vito, real fast regarding Isaiah and Carl. Apparently, they reshot a lot of Brave New World before they released it. And apparently in the original version, Cap, Isaiah, and the new Falcon were all going to fight the Serpent Society. And Isaiah was going to wear his Cap suit. And it's we need that. We need that because, man, because he is. Carl's such a great actor. And he's perfect for Isaiah. And I kind of, maybe, I don't know what their plan is. But it'd be great to see him in Secret War or Doomsday. Go ahead, Vito. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say my takeaway of the day that Dean saw it, I think he saw it at a Marvel screening. He texted me, "Brave New World, neither brave nor new." And I texted him back, "Was it World?" And
that's right.
I watched it maybe a couple of days later, and I felt like it was just an extended episode of the Falcon Winter Soldier, which I enjoyed. I'm fine with that. Like that's fine if that's the direction you want to go.
Sure.
But there is a lot of cutting room floor missed opportunities from what it was originally.
Also, and maybe this is a hot take, but I like in some ways I used to think that like the movies could be like when we used to have annuals. Remember the annuals in comics, which were like these big epic things like the wedding of Reed and Sue Richards or something.
All the Art Adams X-Men ones,
Even DC, the man who has everything, the Superman story where Mongol gives him the Black Rose and he sees his life as it would have been on Krypton.
Yeah.
Right.
But
so
go on.
In fact, put a pin on that Krypton thing because I have a question for Vito.
He talks to me every week.
Yeah, right. And but I was thinking like maybe the movies are like annuals and the TV shows are like issues or miniseries, right? Well, I think, and I understand that. Well, I don't know what's going on with cinema anymore, going to the movie theater or whatever. But it's just like, just make TV shows, and let them crescendo into the big kind of finale ending, which could be like a movie or whatever. I understand people still need to go to the movies and stuff, but it's getting harder and harder to come up with a dilemma that feels new or relevant, which was why the Brave New World was touching upon certain things, and it was kind of like, oh wow, that's interesting, and the Red Hulk, but and I'm in because I'm very forgiving, right? And I appreciate the criticisms of it all. I have less stake in that way because we have our comics, so the movies always feel like they really are an amalgamation and an adaptation of a whole bunch of stories, concentrated. Like, remember when we used to buy frozen orange juice and you would take it and put it in a big thing of water.
Yeah.
And then you would get your full bottle of orange juice. That to me is what the movies are. It's concentrated orange juice, you know.
Interesting. That's hilarious.
So that's how I view it. And I'm usually very entertained by it. And to be honest, I was a little biased because I went and saw that movie sitting next to Ann Nesenti, hanging out with Chris Claremont, a bunch of the Marvel folks, and then, you know, hanging out afterwards, talking about the movie, hearing Chris Claremont say to me the most famous line he ever wrote, which was basically, what's the Wolverine line?
I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't
very nice. And you're just like, what is going on? Like, you get to be a fanboy. It just automatically makes you a fanboy.
I do want to say something though, Dean, that like saying that they're like annuals is a really great analogy, but I do have to point out that I don't think that these movies are meant to be high cinema. I don't think they're meant to be an Ang Lee, Brokeback Mountain, or anything like that. They are spectacles. And the thing is, where Brave New World fails, if it fails at anything, is that it's not spectacular. It is good. It's well made. It's well written. It's well acted. And your mileage may vary, on any of those qualifications, but it's not spectacular. And I think that's, and then you go to the other side, Thor, Love and Thunder is spectacular, but it's not well thought out.
Yeah, it was poorly executed. Go ahead, Dino.
Right. Poorly executed.
But then you have the on your left moment, or you have Peter Parker.
Yeah, that kind of callback.
No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Like to
God, I know that's heartbreaking.
Don't bring that up.
Oh my God.
The craziest thing about Tom Holland in that movie and in Endgame is how is he in a World War II movie as an 18-year-old like drafty, like that scene where all the guns are coming and he's holding on to the gauntlet, and like there's just he's being bombarded and he's being shell shocked. Like it is absolutely insane how he pulled that off. And no one I have ever heard talk about Endgame ever talks about.
Good point.
That's a World War II reaction. Like any World War II movie I've ever seen. 1918, was that the Sam Mendes movie? Which is a World War I movie.
Yeah.
1917.
Or 1917. Yeah.
That is like I watched Tom Holland in Endgame in that section, where he's trying to abscond with the gauntlet, and that's the first thing I thought of. It's like, oh my God, like this is siege guns going off in during the Battle of the Bulge. This is like what a youngster from America felt like in Europe, in a world that's not his own, and he's just like holding on, and like I see that, and no one else picked up on it. And like, what am I watching? Like that I'm getting that, and no one else is. I don't know.
No, I get that absolutely.
But that's why these conversations are good because we get to see the different points of view.
I said it.
Yeah. No.
I'm looking right at you.
That's why, again, this is what I love about Word Balloon. And Mike Gold earlier today was going off on tangents about other things than what we were going to talk about, and he's like, but that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm like, yes it is, Mike. People like the tangents, people like it, and that's why I'm always comfortable when I do a show like this. And I want to promote your guys' podcast, and we'll talk about whatever new books you guys want to talk about. But no, it is these kind of nerd conversations, and we're old enough to have had a couple generations of reading this stuff and consuming the good TV and TV movies and the bad ones, and appreciating the new stuff. And I'm with you, Dean, on I get like, hey man, we grew up with the challenge of the superheroes or the roast that they did on NBC.
Yeah, right.
Those horrible things. But in the words of Dana Carvey, we loved them because it's like, oh my God, they got comic books on TV. Yeah. This is great. Yeah.
That roast, I caught it as a kid. I caught it by accident. It was on at like it was on at 7 o'clock or 7:30 on NBC.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't know it was coming. And I caught it by accident, and I've been chasing that dragon for so many years. You know what I mean? Because they never replayed it.
It was on DC Universe while DC Universe was streaming.
Yeah.
And now, of course, it's more like Marvel Unlimited, and it's just the comics. But they did have it on there, and I remember rewatching it. You know what's great about that one? And also the first
Soul Man
they did.
Man is ridiculous.
Oh, that hurt. Ghetto Man. He wasn't even
Ghetto Man. Thank you. That's
he was Ghetto Man. Oops. Exactly. Not too PC today. But Charlie Callis in the 90s came through Chicago and was playing stand-up at one of the casinos here in Illinois. And so he was at our radio station, and our host was just all about, I saw you in the Jerry Lewis movies. I used to watch you on the Dean Martin roast, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, Sinestro. And his bulging eyes got even bigger, and he nudged his handler, and he goes, you see? He's like, John, there is one of you in every city, only one that remembers that show. And I'm like, Charlie, you got to understand, you didn't need the makeup because you are Gil Kane's interpretation of Sinestro.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just true, man. And I go, hey, did you ever see the comics? He's like, oh, yeah. He goes, I sign them all the time. I'm like, well, it doesn't surprise me, man, because, yeah, perfect casting.
So I do want to point out real quick that the gentleman that asked that question about Thor: Love and Thunder, Eric Bennett, is a talented writer of his own right. He'll definitely, I know he'll take a Thor redo. Eric is a talented writer in his own right. He has a comic book called Steelwolf, which they just finished doing a kind of Trinity Kickstarter called Worlds. Eric, tell me in the chat what it is. It's World something, and I'm blanking.
Yeah, we'll post it. Absolutely.
But it's his character Steelwolf is like a Russian Superman. I've done a crossover with him with Stray, and going back to what we were talking about, Dean,
sure,
about Red Hook and Stray, but Stray and Steelwolf are crossed over. I'm writing currently. It was Stray and Steelwolf in the first one. It's going to be Steelwolf versus Stray in the next one.
Oh wow!
So we're doing like these whole kind of like one shots where everyone is a different type of thing. I think we're going to do Stray X Steelwolf, where it's like they both get combined into one thing.
Hilarious.
You know, we're just going to be goofy with it and very simple.
And for listeners, they're hearing all this and going, what the hell are you talking about? Stray, Steelwolf, Red Hook, Purple Heart, like what is this? This is the next 5 to 10 years of the next movies you're going to be seeing that will become concentrated orange juice that you add water to, so you can truncate all these stories into 3 movies.
Because you never know who's watching. There is a Stray pilot floating around in Hollywood that was written by Jake Cooney, a friend of mine who's a very talented director. Jake Cooney and I wrote that is floating around Hollywood in some trays, like in inboxes. So feel free. I'm ready to write an entire Stray series.
So I have a question for you, Vito.
Krypton.
This is like our podcast.
No, this is good. Yes.
All right, I'm going to say this out loud so that the viewers, the listeners, can understand. What I'm doing right now.
My daughter just handed this to me, and I don't know what to say to
the Articles of Confederation that predated the Constitution.
Like the word match. I don't know what it means.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. I wish I could help you more, but I certainly know the document that that's what governed the United States before the Constitution.
Dean, what's your question? Because I'm not answering that one.
I love American history. Go on.
So when I do this, and this is something that Clark Kent does. He turns into Superman by taking off his glasses.
Right.
And so this act alone, I'm putting my glasses back on, and now I'm Clark Kent. Now I'm Superman.
Right.
Now I'm Clark Kent. Is that Kryptonian martial arts?
Not in my story.
Both in All-Star Superman, Quitely's art, and Christopher Reeve's performance in Superman, the first movie, Clark purposely would slump over and make himself seem smaller, and always had the kind of, well, gee, I don't know what the hell's going on look on his face. And when he thought about revealing himself to Lois, he takes off the glasses, and all of a sudden he straightens up. It's like, that's why people don't put 2 and 2 together, because he is acting his ass off as Clark to fool everybody. And then, because truly, Dean, I mean, my God, it was like, and I'm sure a million guys stand up during the George Reeves show. Hey, help me out here. How come glasses and nobody's recognizing that he's Superman? Really, glasses? That's it? And it's like, no, man. There was a whole acting. So not martial arts.
It was a whole body persona. Like, forget the glass. The glass is the last thing.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It really was like, what an incredible actor. And that might also come from the director, Richard Donner, as well. I'll give him props. Oh, hey, Carrie. How you doing?
Hi, Carrie. Good to see you, buddy.
But yeah, like like for him to perform that and to sell like, and then of course we've all seen Kill Bill Part 2 where Bill,
David Carradine,
played by the late great Cassavetes,
David Carradine, Kung Fu.
David Carradine, that's right, Carradine, has a whole monologue about how the schlumpy loser Clark Kent type behavior was Superman Kal-El's commentary on man and society, which is kind of interesting. I bought it at first, and then I think, there's a little bit of
that's
too much of an extreme.
That's Tarantino's point of view. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I love that he has a thought.
It's an interesting thing to think about.
It's a good point of view for a villain too.
100%, absolutely.
Oh, right, for a Carradine, that's right. I didn't even think of it. It came from the point of view of a villain, a bad guy.
The other thing, Henry Cavill once walked in Times Square wearing a Superman T-shirt, and no one recognized him. It's context. It's all context. There have been so many people. When I used to go up to the DC offices and hang out with Chiarello, who we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of people that would just stare at me and go, "I know you from some." I'm like, Jim Hanley's Universe, and they're like, Eddie Berganza. Eddie Berganza once said to me, "I didn't recognize you outside of, like, not behind a counter." And I'm like, you don't say that to somebody out loud. Like, what's wrong? Of course,
he said that.
Yeah.
Shit, that guy is. All right. I said it, everybody. That's not Vito or Dean said it. I'm saying that. Jerk.
So wait, I want to talk about Ithacon because obviously Ed, I don't know if he's still watching, but like last year when I went to Ithacon,
Ed's always
it was so wholesome, but also had its edginess to it, and
in what way?
Yeah.
Well, wholesome in that it was like it's run by students.
Yeah, one of the best things about that show, and I love that Ed is teaching event planning with an actual event, and they're getting practical experience at Ithaca College doing that. Keep going, Dino.
That's right. So I'm getting emails with Ed CC'd, but from students trying to work with me and other talent to arrange things, to make sure we're comfortable, to organize the show. And they're walking away with a skill set, to figure out how to apply these in other, formats, right?
Yes.
So, and you get there, and it's a really cool space. And like, I was just at IC3, Independent Comics Creator Con, in New Haven, Connecticut, which, by the way, is very gangster. New Haven, Connecticut.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a little watch out. Right. And then there's Yale. But the show was great, and what it reminded me of was an old SPX. When I say old, I mean early SPX, like the 90s SPX, Small Press Expo, where all the creators kind of hung out with each other, beginning, middle, end, morning, afternoon, night. And it was all a love fest because we were all cartoonists trying to make our way, and we're all championing each other. So in a way, Ithacon also reminded me of that, even though it has veterans, rookies, retailers, all it runs the gamut, right?
Yeah.
And publishers. In fact, I met Sean Hainsworth, who is the writer of a comic series called Aerotech, like Eros technology, but Aerotech. And I bought the first 2 issues, like erotic, right?
Yeah.
I bought the first 2 issues, and then we've had a parlay since. And I then wrote and drew an 8-page story where I created a character for their universe. And I don't know if it's going to be there this weekend, but it's like a year later. And so someone I met, I then created work for and got paid, and I got a gig out of it,
That's
which
great.
was really cool.
Yeah.
And then there was another writer looking for an artist that came up to me at that last year's show. And they were like, I said, well, I'm not available right now, but I was actually talking to another artist, Keith Haugen, is this? I don't know how you say his last name. Haugen, I believe that's how you spell it.
Sounds right. Greg Haugen.
I was like,
that's how we used to say it, Greg Haugen. So
thank you. And so I was like, you should check out that guy's artwork. And lo and behold, they collaborated, and I think that hopefully that collaboration will be done by this weekend.
Fantastic.
So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens at these shows, and
sure.
And I wanted to praise Ithacon for that and being open to that. And when you have people like, and then I met like my hero, one of my heroes, Don Simpson, who sat next to me. And, and I'd like to bring up Ed Piskor because he's been like, such a champion of trying to figure out what really happened here.
You just mentioned 2 Pittsburgh guys.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right. And in fact, tomorrow, April 1st, we're recording this on the 31st of March.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of Ed Piskor's, and I'll just say it, and we don't need to talk about it, but I'll say murder-suicide. I'll just say murder-suicide.
I get it, man. Death by social media. Yeah. No, I hear you, man. And again, it's a complicated story, and I knew Ed as well as I could have as a recurring guest on my show, and I appreciated his talent. And I really think it's. I mean, again, he died by his own choice. Well, you know what I'm saying. He died by his own hand.
I mean, he yes, and yet there's so much more.
Oh yeah.
About that story that like hopefully, sometimes someone's death is an example of how to behave better. And I mean, maybe there's something that he could have done better, but there was definitely a lot of things that people contributed to that.
Oh my God, yes.
Do better, right?
Well, Dean, even here, and it will give a milder example, and it's on the other side of the spectrum of politics and society. Rachel Ziegler and Snow White and her comments, and and I have too, Vito, for like the last 2 weeks. And listen, she's under 30, and forgive me, everybody, I don't mean to sound condescending, but she's still a kid. She's a kid in her 20s, and she talked a little too much, and somebody really should have, whether it was within her own representation, going, hey, you're part of a multi-million-dollar corporate thing that they want to sell. Calm down and tone down the social media and tone down the red carpet comments. But so even before that, go ahead, Dean. Feel free.
At age 30, I would have been like her, right? At age almost 58.
Hey, man, I was an idiot in my 20s. I was an idiot in my 20s. I would absolutely.
Or you're standing up for what you believe in or whatever, all that stuff. And at age 58 or at our age, you just turned 60, you said, right?
I just turned
60. You're like 12, right? So
he's 12 and a 15-year-old kid. Absolutely, man. I'm confused.
Drinking coffee syrup.
Coffee soda, everybody. I'm very confused by that. But all right. If you like it, that's cool.
But me and Vito were talking about this about an hour before we hopped onto about this very thing. And like, it's so weird because on the one hand, you should be able to make I'm not going to say necessarily woke, but a brown skinned Snow White with CGI dwarves. But then what's going to happen is that real dwarf actors are going to say, why didn't you hire us? Right?
Dinklage did. Little Peter Dinklage absolutely said that. And by the way, he was right.
He's totally right. Okay. And then, but
that wasn't Ziegler, by the way. That was Disney. That's Disney saying, I don't know about this dwarf thing. Let's do what they did in The Hobbit and do forced perspective and have regular sized actors. And while we're at it, hey, let's have a woman. Let's have a couple people of color. That's fine. But again, you should have found little people of color. And if you wanted to put little women in there, I'm sure Happy could have been a woman, or name your character of the seven,
Right. And one thing I was saying to Vito was, if it was you, me, or Vito making our $10,000 movie with little people or whatever, and we couldn't get that, and we did we fudged a bunch of things, nobody's going to give a crap, and somebody might point out, hey guy, but because it's Disney, and it's a huge corporation, like you said, it's almost like it's their burden to get it right, right?
100%.
To do the right thing.
Yes, they're not allowed to fail.
Of the conversation.
What
I said was they're not allowed to fail, like, because they're Disney. It's like saying,
that movie was so important to the Disney empire that exists today. And I'm sorry, again, Rachel has her faults, and she should own them. But by the same token, like we were saying about poor Ed Piskor, social media has absolutely just shit-hammered her to a pulp. But beyond that, again, back to Disney and stuff, and the decision of, well, we're not going to have Sunday, My Prince Will Come. That's like one of your theme songs, like Zippity Doodah and When You Wish Upon a Star. I'm sorry. And also, there's nothing wrong with that story that is thousands of years older than Grimm's fairy tales. And real fast, Dean, I also want to point out, I do think the Germans are just as fair as people of color are when they go cultural appropriation. And it's like, yeah, this is a German folktale. And while I agree with you that I had no problem with a person of color playing Snow White,
right?
Just like I had no problem with a person of color playing Little Mermaid and stuff, I can appreciate a German or a Dane in the case of Little Mermaid going, that's our story. Why is this happening?
So with that in mind, a couple of things. Two, I'll get to the second one in a minute. But
Okay.
the first one is, and again, I don't know why I kind of fell into a 15-minute rabbit hole on this situation. Like, and
it's kind of in the news, and it kind of is in nerd circles. Like, I mean, I have no problem talking about this, and I want to talk about this. Honestly,
so when she at one point she was very emotional, and she was talking about how at some point, I'm not a perfect person. I'm flawed. I'm broken too, just like everybody else. And thanks for acknowledging that. Yes, hallelujah.
Yeah.
But then she kind of veered into the thing that I think which is unfortunate, and this happens to young people because of their handlers and their agents and their lawyers and producers, where suddenly she's like elevating herself to be, but someday I'm going to have a long line for me, or something to that effect.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
you're going to see me for who I am. I'm going to have a long. I'm like, chill out. And I was talking to Vito about this earlier. You the one thing, you might want to be rich, but you don't want to be famous, because fame comes with so many kinds of prices. Okay. And it can mess with you and mess with your brain,
Yeah.
So she's young. She got a little famous because she was really good in I almost said Romeo and Juliet. What's the movie?
West Side Story.
West Side Story.
Yeah, she was Marie.
So, she's great in West Side Story. And so she got taste of fame, and like everybody loves you. So suddenly you're exponential, right? And it can make your mind think,
fill your head
bigger, that you're the shit, and you gotta chill out, because you can be the shit for a little while, but then you're back to, as Vito was saying earlier, you get back into the middle, and then you're sitting in the middle somewhere, and sometimes you either go lower or you can figure out a way to go higher. Okay.
Well, we all meet in the middle at some point. That's what I was sounding like.
100%, man.
But the ultimate thing that I was talking to Vito about, and I think we've all discussed this as straight white men, is that like, so for a bunch of years, and again, just stop buying my comics if you hate me, for a bunch of years where like make every character black, or another, not white, or female, or them, they, whatever. And then what a lot of people are doing is, and that's really cool, is that they're taking pre-existing characters, transforming them. That's fine, whatever, it's fiction. And then the people who they were trying to sell that to don't necessarily show up. And then they go, oh my God, what happened? Was it the actor? Was it the story? Was it this? I don't know what it is. I don't know, because, and again, I can be appreciative of all kinds, because I feel like I grew up in the melting pot of New York City. Okay. So I know all kinds of people, not just a whole bunch of white dudes. Most of my friends are not necessarily white. Okay. But whatever. And so maybe they make a poor version of a movie, or maybe the audience didn't show up to it because they could see that they were being, not placated, but pandered to.
Yes.
And so the real answer is, you don't necessarily need to even do another Snow White movie. Okay. You got Snow White. Why don't you just make brand new characters of color, of gender, of sex, of ideas, and just, we're open to it. We're all open. I mean, not all, but the good people. We're super open to all kinds of people, and let's make those stories happen.
Where I came up, I don't even think I even said this in our conversation, but where I come into it, or where my opinion is, I don't care. Like, I don't like it wasn't Snow White. On its surface is not a story that I'm particularly interested in.
Okay.
So I wasn't going to see the movie anyway.
Sure. Me neither.
Have I seen the cartoon? Probably. Like I
you don't remember?
Robin Hood was my Disney movie that I was
great Disney movie, great early 70s Disney movie. Absolutely, man.
So like that was my Disney movie. And then after that, I didn't really watch a Disney movie until Little Mermaid. And then I saw Lion King.
Yeah,
but like I like most of the Disney stuff, but like the things that The Incredibles, that doesn't count. That's Pixar. But like Wreck-It Ralph was a new idea, to go to Dean's point.
Sure.
That worked out well.
But the reason
Frozen being a translation of an old story, etc. But I don't think you need to do the live action ones at all.
I completely agree with that, and it is driving me nuts how much they keep going to the well for these live action versions of these cartoon classics. But by the same token, and Gico Rijo says this: try convince those corporations to take a chance on these new ideas, etc.
Absolutely.
But that's the problem, because now I'm forgetting the name of the new sci-fi movie that was tanking, and it's also streaming now, I think, on Netflix. 17 is in the title. Chico Rijo knows.
Mickey 17.
Mickey 17. Yeah.
The guy who did Parasite.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And it's not doing well. And it's like, and I think that's more about the current theater going experience problem of nobody's going to the theaters. But I also think some of these movies that fail, where they do reinterpret a character, it comes down to the writing. And if the writing is not there, we're not going to buy it. And I agree with what you're saying about Snow White. And Snow White and the Huntsman was a different story than the Seven Dwarfs. Well, it worked well enough that they made a sequel. And it's like you could do
without Snow White.
you could just do, as Dean said, have a different character from, and I'm saying, the Black Forest or whatever. And okay, here's a different character. Yeah. Again, they're fairy tales. We'll buy it. But you got to have a good story. This is my frustration, as with others have this problem with the new Star Wars stuff and the new Star Trek stuff. If the writing sucks, you failed. You failed your actors. You failed your audience. And I'm very sorry. And you're maybe trying with the best intentions, and also when it comes to the IPs, they're trying to sell new toys. And that's why C-3PO suddenly has a red arm instead of both gold arms, because now J.J. Abrams is going to make money from the toys and not just Lucasfilms. And it's just that kind of bullshit that gets in the way of storytelling. And listen, I hate BB-8. I don't mind saying it. I hate that goddamn thing. And really, when R2-D2 shows up, it's ridiculous that he's under a tarp, and it's like, oh, fuck you. This is like the greatest little garbage pail like robot in the history of sci-fi, and that's how much you are shitting on these original ideas. And I get introducing a new group of characters, and we need to follow them. The fact that we had these 3 movies, and I realize that what's her face passed away, Carrie Fisher, but for them not to have been together in either the first or second movie, all 3 of them, fuck you. That's just such an error and such an insult to all of us that spent 40 years loving this story. And I'm sorry, man. Again, I know we're old farts and you want to get in new audiences, but there is a way to do both. I always point out Jason Aaron in the comics, unlike the Love and Thunder movie that has its flaws. When he gave Jane Foster the hammer, half the book was about Jane dealing with being Thor, and the other half, and I always love saying this word, was about the Odin son, was about original Thor, and I'm not worthy of the hammer anymore, and if I'm not Thor, who the fuck am I? And it's like, those are 2 interesting stories that it was a pleasure to follow, and Love and Thunder didn't have it. It just didn't. Go ahead,
John.
What do you got?
I just want to offer you a cigarette to maybe calm your nerves. Just to bring,
Well, as I told you, weed's legal in Illinois, so I'll chill out that way later. But no, man, I'm just on my soapbox.
Yeah. Going back to what we were talking about with Ed Piskor, I want to know if you guys had seen the Afua Richardson debacle that happened.
No, I
so
love
what had happened was,
she's lovely. She's a wonderful person.
She's one of my oldest friends in the industry. Like I've known her since before she was doing comics. She was shopping at Jim Hanley's, and so I've known her forever. So Afua had a very poor interaction with Jason Pearson, the late Jason Pearson, and I believe Jason took his own life.
I didn't remember that. Wow.
Can't remember now.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people online being the key word, blamed it on her because she had made it public, the chat that they had. Jason apologized. I think she accepted his apology. Jason dies. his fans start, sending her death threats and stuff, to the point where, God bless her, Jason's mom penned an open letter and posted it on social media. And hopefully it's killed everything now that we don't have to worry about this anymore. But it's just going back to what Dean and you were saying about Ed and the judgment by social media, like a trial by parasocial relationships. It's people got to remember there's still people back here.
Yeah.
I'm a human being. You just saw my daughter. Dean's a human being. You're a human being. We're not meant to be perfect.
No,
we're not we don't have the answers,
Amen.
Going back to what you guys were saying about Rachel Ziegler and Snow White and everything. I don't necessarily agree with everything you guys said. That's why I pretty much kept my mouth shut, I guess.
Okay.
But like there are a lot of truth in what you said, and then there's a lot of like, that's a very good opinion. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily mine, but it's an opinion. And
sure.
The thing is, good old Swifty Lang. He and I shared. He's a writer.
Okay.
He lives in LA. He shared a studio with Dean and I. He and I got into a really bad argument about opinion, and I said to him, "But it's my opinion.
Sure.
You can't tell me my opinion's wrong. It just might not sound right to you.
Okay.
But you can't take it away from me." And that's the thing. I will not take anybody's opinion away from them, unless that opinion has to do with Sig Heiling at the inauguration, or selling a goddamn car on the lawn of the White House.
I hear you, man.
That's when your opinion is bullshit.
I bought two.
You can't even pay your rent.
You're part of the problem, Haspiel. Absolutely, man. That's hilarious. Jesus Christ.
His last name is Haspiel.
Haspielen.
Unbelievable. I hear you. Oh, I know, guys. Jesus. And again, social media.
But could I just?
Good, Dino. No, it's cool. Yeah.
Because it's getting late, but Vito.
Vito. I don't mean it. If we're keeping you up, I apologize.
Oh, no. I'll probably got a couple more minutes.
Okay.
But Afua, the Jason Pearson's mother was actually defending Afua. I just wanted to make that was clear. And saying like, there was whatever differences between Afua and Jason, and then it became public, for whatever reason. I don't care. Like it's not my business. I don't even know why I know about this, And then you're right. Like, people glom on. It's like that's their life. Some of these people, their life is just to find controversy and to foment it for some reason, because they have no power in their life. So that's the power that they have,
There was a point.
People. But I was going to say real quick, none of us are perfect, man. But most of us who can do shitty things sometimes or make mistakes, most of us are not evil either. Okay.
That too.
So stop treating us like we're fucking evil. Okay. Or not us, the three of us, but people.
Yeah.
Like you make mistakes, you learn from mistakes. Okay. And let us learn from mistakes and move on. Anyway.
And I'm not saying in the context of Jay and Afua, but I've had friends that have like gone to battle on social media back and forth with these faceless people. And my stock phrase back is, you're never going to win an argument with Darth Vader 28 because he's anonymous and he's hiding behind some sort of, pseudonym. And you know what I'm saying? Not pseudonym. Is it pseudonym? All right, forgive me because my brain's rattled.
Anonymous, anonymity, or whatever.
Yeah. But fake name. Yeah, I meant fake name. So pseudonym.
Yeah, pseudonym because he's writing something. Right. So
And I'm like, and they always will have the last word because they have they don't care. They don't have work to get back to. They're happy to fuck with you until you give up. And man. So exactly as G. Riho says. Don't feed the trolls is still great advice. Absolutely, man. Yeah. A good friend of mine just lost his radio job. He was at the sports station I was at for 30 years because he couldn't contain himself on social media. And it's like, this guy's a pipsqueak that you're fighting with. You should have just ignored it and walked away. And it was so insignificant, but it was the last straw of other times he's had ridiculous outbursts. And also he's in a corporate structure where, hey, you want to cut a good 6-figure son? let's fire this guy because he's obviously pissed off a good portion of the audience. And it's like, that's what happens, man. You are walking a tightrope these days if you're a public figure when it comes to social media. Go ahead, Dino.
And by the way, like you could argue that the three of us are semi-public figures because
public figures.
We publish something that the public can consume, whether it's podcasts, comic books, or whatever. But like, I do think, and it pisses me off that going back to Ed Piskor, one of the things that happened in 7 days, maybe 8 days total, was that a publisher that was going to publish him his next book pulled that deal because of an accusation that even wasn't that big a deal, to be honest.
I kind of agree.
And that was one of the major things that, like, when I spoke to him was a problem. Like, why did that happen? And I think that should be illegal. If you're in contract with someone and someone makes you an accusation, maybe put it on pause, or try to figure out what's happening. But you don't pull the contract away.
I hear you, man.
From an accusation, okay? So
because it was adjudicated in the court of public opinion before it ever got to any kind of
not only the publishing deal with Ed, but also I know he had a big expo or whatever in Japan. I want to say because I was trying to help set him and Jim Rugg up on a convention appearance, and Ed's like, I really can't do it. I got X, I got Y coming up, and all this stuff, and then that whole shit storm came down on him. Yeah.
He had an art show in his hometown where he felt like a pariah. There was something else that happened, but what's really cool is that, except for it took the death of Ed Piskor, was that then his family was able to rally and take that same project and to crowdfund it and basically get the same deal.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
And that book will be coming out as it should. So anyway,
downer. Yeah, no, but but it's important. And honestly, Dean, this is why. And Vito, I'm glad you're willing to go to the places we went to in this conversation as well.
What's funny is in our podcast, we always try to not censor ourselves, but we always try to I think Dean more so than I, because I know he's mentioned it, like what if I say something that offends somebody, and Dean's not like that type of person. He's just, but he's very conscious of who is listening, and me, like, it's just a very weird world we find ourselves in, where you have champions of free speech, but it's not free speech. And then you have these people that try to censor free speech under the guise of free speech.
Yes.
And it's very, like, we're not in a simulation. It's just a complicated world.
You got it.
And we didn't set out to be in this world, but this is a world we find ourselves in.
Correct.
I don't know how much when we talk, like, I laugh sincerely. I laugh with my entire body, as is Dean, as he's done tonight. Like, where he'll throw his head back and almost fall out of his chair. I react. Maybe I don't think a lot of what when I answer questions. Like, I just react and I answer as earnestly and from the hip as possible. But I think with our shows, we're just taking what our honest conversations are and making them public. And we're just saying that, these are warts and all, these are the answers to these questions that we have, where we talk about the industry, we talk about one of the more popular topics was, what is a comic book and what is the comic book industry in 2025? And like I said, to Dean last week when we talked to Rob Guillory, like, I think we've worked on 13 episodes. By the time we get to episode 52, we'll probably have figured out the answer to that question, because it changes every week. God, with Diamond and Alliance now buying Diamond and
everything. Oh, I didn't know Alliance. Wow, I missed that headline. I didn't realize Alliance bought Diamond.
Yeah, Alliance Gaming or Entertainment or something like that. Bought
Interesting.
Wow, well, it hasn't been, the sale hasn't gone through, but it's in the works.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. No, and again, guys, I appreciate. Well, first of all, give everyone the title of your podcast.
Me? Oh, because my name's first.
Jump ball.
No, because I saw Dean do this.
Yeah.
He threw it at me. It's just Vito X Dino or Vito by Dino. Maybe not by. Doesn't make sense because I didn't make Dean. Dean made me, basically. Dean drew my first comic ever, so I would dare say Dean made me. So it'd be Vito by Dino. Well, that makes sense then. Yeah, so it's Vito X Dino. We put it on YouTube every Monday, and then we put it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Pocket Casts every Thursday. So very simple. You just search that, or you can search Incognito, which is my tag on just about everything, and you can find my YouTube channel, which is where the podcast is hosted.
That's excellent, man. No, and again, I'm glad you guys are doing it, and I've been happy that Dean's been doing the podcast thing for years now.
Well, and John, and like you, Gil Roth, who does the Virtual Memory Show and has a lot of cartoonists on, and I'd say a handful of others. The conversational quality of the podcast is what inspired me, and I believe Vito probably as well.
Yeah,
just to be freestyle and like have whatever we did tonight for an hour and a half, is the same spirit of that. And for me, what it does is, or the Jack Kirby podcast with Tommy Lombardozzi and Mike D. These two Goombas that talk about Jack Kirby and everything, and like I love it because after I've figured out the script and the layout of the comic or whatever it is I'm doing, I need company. I need some conversation happening in my ear while I'm inking or crafting, doing something, because it's a lonely art, a lot of this stuff that we do.
That was the lesson I learned from working in sports radio, and we were different. And I really think our bosses were expecting a more buttoned down, straight laced presentation of sports and much more, not fun. And we had a bunch of street guys that had this corner bar attitude of, the Cubs suck, and let me tell you why, or the White Sox are underappreciated, and let me tell you why. And it's like, that's who we're appealing to, is the blue collar guy. And it's so funny. My generation of my hosts that I worked with in the 90s into the early 2000s, a lot of them have aged out. They were older than me, and I'm 60. And the new guys, they're all ESPN cookie cutter guys. There's nothing wrong with that. But now it's the station I used to work at, it lost its blue collar kind of feeling. And it was this conversational, like, hey, let's talk. And we had commercial breaks. And that's why I love podcasting, because we can go 90 minutes and have an in-depth conversation without worrying about breaking every 5 minutes or whatever. Although on the audio side, as my fans know, I do put commercials in, and I thank you
those commercials at the beginning were great. I enjoyed the preempted TV shows tonight.
Vito, that honestly, it is one of my favorite things to do, is find old TV specials on YouTube. And it's like, Barney Miller will not be seen tonight. And I found, some of these shows are like really obscure, like Ben Gazzara's show, Run for Your Life, was like his version of The Fugitive, basically. And
I do want to say that a couple other podcasts that I think that influenced us are the Bob Harrison's podcast, Pop Culture Cast.
Pop Culture Squad with Mike Gold and Bob Harrison.
Right. Yeah. Mike and I were talking about that today. Absolutely, man.
I would think the Ink Pulp podcast as well.
Great one.
Those guys.
Sure.
And of course, we talked about him earlier. Ed and Jim.
Ed and Jim, comic book cartoonist kayfabe. Yeah, absolutely, man.
I think what's funny is I think that I don't think Dean ever said we're going to fill that void that no longer that since their show doesn't exist anymore. I don't think Dean ever said that. Even like I don't think he ever intimated it or said it explicitly. But I think that our show does kind of give that same energy, whereas they had a little more character to the way they presented. I think that Dean and I are already characters. We don't need to play anything out,
Yeah, and again, you guys are different people, so it's going to come out differently. Believe me, I have other friends that do interview podcasts, including Carrie, by the way, who says your guys' show is a great podcast. Everyone should go and subscribe and check it out. It's full of great stuff. And the chemistry you two have is fun now. It's all to watch. Yeah, man. And again, they're like, oh, I hope you're not offended, but I'm going to start doing a comic book interview podcast. I'm like, hey, you're a different person. Yeah. And David Harper, who does an excellent podcast, the and now Off Panel. Sketched is his website. Off Panel is his podcast.
Yep.
David's amazing. David, and the only reason why I don't listen to David more is I don't want to be the Chris Farley show of remember that thing you said to David Harper, because really I want my own conversation and stuff.
Right.
And somebody like Brubaker sometimes will just be like, "Hey, I got a new book," and he'll hit everybody, and it's like, good. I'm glad he does that because we do have different audiences and stuff. But no, it's like the guy, and I will name check him, and he's a nice guy, Scott Hines, who did Fanboy Radio before I was doing Word Balloon. 25 years ago. And I'm like, this is great. And I was listening to him, and I'm like, oh, I would have asked a different question. And he and I and the iFanboy guys, we were all on a panel together. Yeah. And he's like, I was here first. And it's like, and I said, Scott, you ever, and this is back when magazines still existed. I'm like, you ever go to the magazine rack and you see U.S. News and Newsweek and Time? They're all covering the same thing, but they all have different perspectives. That's what we do. I'm like, so yeah, you were first, but there's plenty of room for all of us. Relax. So,
and I want to give a shout out also to Bill Burr, who I listen to twice a week.
I love Bill Burr. That is the weekly. Yeah. How you doing? How we all doing here?
Yeah,
I love him. No, he is. God bless him. And I'll throw Dave Chappelle in there. And I know Dave Chappelle offends some people, but they speak their mind and they are not afraid of the PC rules. There is liberal and there is woke. And again, forgive me for using the word, and I'm sure there are portions of my audience that are rolling their eyes, but I'm sorry, there is a difference. And it is the extreme life can get just as frustrating as the extreme right and the extreme left can get equally frustrating from different reasons. And what you guys were saying too about we all believe in free speech unless we disagree with that free speech that is being expressed to us. Right. And that's when you have to grit your teeth. And the other end of the political spectrum, it's like, well, at least for today, it's still a free country. And as much as I might disagree with some of the discussions that are being out there, it's their right to say it unless it is hurting somebody physically or mentally. And that's where I draw the line. And I won't have the Comicsgate people on that I know attack other creators that disagree with them politically. And it's like, no, man. And it bums me out because there's some of my favorite people I used to have on to have conversations with. And it's like when you're punching down at, and you guys are big names, and they are men that I'm talking about. Right. I'm like, that's where I draw the line. I'm like, no, man, you're not being, you're being, well, hey, whatever, man. And again, this is me, but that's my line.
No, but you have your standards too. And I agree with them. And another podcast that actually kind of ended recently. I also really love the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project podcast.
Oh, fun. Anthony and who's the other host?
Rosenthal, his buddy, who is a sports podcaster.
I wonder if I was going to say because we have a Chicago writer. Rosenthal. I was going to say because there's just like the comedy writer Phil Rosenthal was a big Chicago columnist for years.
It's Greg Rosenthal who does the NFL Network, so it's football.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
But no, and not to like, I don't know all the details, but like in terms of freedom of speech, it's like, I do think it's okay for someone from another country to come to America because of the ideals of freedom of speech and to complain about America because that's what we all do as Native Americans.
Damn right.
So this whole ICE thing of just grabbing someone for having an opposing opinion about is so messed up and so wrong. Yeah, it's disgusting,
It's not, and so it's not American, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, Republican or Democrat. We all should stand up and go, no, that's not American. That's wrong, and it should stop. Absolutely, man. It's jackboot ignorance, and it's really embarrassing. I mean,
and it's scary. It's fucking terrifying. It's terrifying.
And Vito also. I don't know how young you are compared to old farts like me and Dino. And I'm old, and I'm older than Dean. But I mean, we grew up in that post-Watergate period, and it's like I really thought we were past some of this shit, and I really thought we had reached a point where the people spoke up and are like, "No, this is wrong," and we're gonna stand. And people have the right to protest and complain without fear of their words. Not their actions, their words.
I will say this: I'll be 52 in June.
Okay.
So that gives you, I'm
close enough.
Just a little bit after, but it was good enough for my grandfather, and it was good enough for Jack Kirby. If you're a Nazi, you're getting hit.
Yeah.
Just know that my hands are ready. And I know people are going to be like, I'll challenge that. bless you, challenge me on this. I will punch out any Nazi.
But all right, but while you're punching Nazis, I will also allow a Nazi to have a Substack.
So will Substack, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately,
so
as I discovered, unfortunately, there are some bad actors that are on Substack, and it's like,
but
okay,
it is that, but at the same time, like I don't know them, I don't follow any of them. But if I was curious, I'd be like, oh, well, let me see what they have to say.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
And from a milder standpoint, I'll dip into Fox every now and then, or some of the other Republican outlets, because you got to understand what the conversation is about and what the other side. And I have a lot of reasonable conservative friends that we can have a friendly discussion and disagree, but I want to know where they're coming from. Exactly. And not on every angry social issue, but like, okay, we both agree that there are problems about, cutting waste in government or whatever. What is your solution? Or how do we take care of provide for the general welfare, which is in the preamble of the Constitution? I really believe in that. So what is your solution rather than the safety net that we try to give the underprivileged to help them out of this bad economic situation? Go ahead, Vito.
I was going to say, I think the key difference, though, is that you're talking about conservative friends. You already have a dialogue already starting.
Yes.
The problem is when you get to people you don't know, and that's where it gets hairy.
Right.
I can't give anybody the time of day that I don't know, like when it comes to this stuff, just because being part Hispanic and seeing the way Trump handled Puerto Rico by playing basketball with paper
towels. Yeah.
Seeing how mostly Hispanic people are being targeted by ICE, seeing how the gay and lesbian and trans communities are being affected.
100%.
I can't, I live in if you look it up on even Reddit of all things, the area that I live in, there's a guy who has a billboard by his business, and it's a pro-Trump billboard. Wow. He's actually put the N-word on there. He's actually put a swastika on there. And I'm like, this is America, sure, and you might claim freedom of speech, but that's fucked up.
That is fucked up. No, that's fucked up. That's too far.
It's just hate. It's just hate.
It is hate. Right. Yeah, it's hate. Right.
But I will say this: I would buy the first ticket, Vito, if you decided you wanted to play Snow White in a movie. I'm there. I'm there for you. I'm there for you.
Interesting.
Any casting directors listening?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to save the stash, Vito. I don't know how to say.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I've worn drag more than I've ever worn a tuxedo, and that is the God's honest truth.
I love it.
By two.
I'm jealous.
And I'll tell you what. Funny little tidbit about me. One of those times that I wore drag, I was doing a skit in college with a young lady by the name of Beth Ostrowski. Beth Ostrowski is now currently married to Howard Stern.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, absolutely.
So she and I went to school together, and she and I were in the skit together, and we were like, it's so obvious that Beth wears the dress and she's the sexy girl.
Absolutely.
Vito, you are the most opposite of a sexy woman. Why don't we just do it? And I'm like,
hilarious. That's fantastic.
University of Pittsburgh, 1990.
Now that's America. That's America, right?
I saw her Maxim layout. Absolutely,
yeah, she's a great gal.
Oh, lovely woman.
What she's doing with animal rescue just makes me proud that I know.
Oh, that's great. Well, I didn't know that about her. That's wonderful. Yeah. That's very, very cool. No, Howard is another great interviewer that I have appreciated his mellowing.
Me too.
More,
Yeah,
but I wasn't
since '93.
Tricks from the old stuff, but what were you going to say, Vito, about?
Oh no, I've listened to him since '93.
Sure.
I do. Since we were talking about Ithacon earlier, I want to mention a local show in New York that hopefully some folks can check out. It's called New Dorp High School's Comic Con. It's in New Dorp, Staten Island, home of
New Dorp.
Colin Jost.
Yes. Yeah.
With a
New Dorp.
Dork?
DORP.
Oh, Dorp.
Which is funny, but Evan Dorkin might actually be there because he's a local New York Staten Islander. That is on Saturday, May 10th from 12 to 5. The guys that run it are friends of mine. I try to go every year, but it always ends up being on a date that I can't make it. But Dan Slott has been there. A couple of really big guys have shown up.
Sure.
So if you're in New York and you want to take a ferry ride and jump on the I think S79, take you right there. S79 bus, I should say. But New York Comic Con, I said, I want to give them a little shout because it's run by students. It's it's held in a high school. It's very much in the same vein as the Ithacon, except it's not college; it's high school students.
That's excellent. And it's giving the kids practical experience that they can put on when they do hit the job market and go, well, I ran a convention.
Yeah.
And this is what I had to do for the convention.
Or I published my own book,
100%. Well, and again, that's why I'm glad guys like Andy Schmidt and Comics Experience and some of the other, and also the actual in-house schools like Huberton and some of the others, Pratt and, School of Visual Arts. No, I'm glad and then Bendis teaching as he does at God damn it, I think Portland State. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Portland State. Pretty sure it's Portland State. I mean, I know it's Oregon, but yeah,
sounds
and mentioning small cons, my college, Illinois State, a couple of years ago, Fabio Moon was at C2E2, the Chicago convention.
Yeah,
I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? He goes, well, the kids down in Bloomington invited me to their con, and this is only a week before, so I'm staying with friends up here. And I'm like, oh my God. I go, that's awesome that you're going down to the school, man. And, coming from Argentina and stuff. I'm like, that's fantastic. Wow. Way to go, Fabio. So,
I enjoyed my time in Chicago. There was a show that I went to pre-COVID called Comic-Con Revolution. Run by my buddy Mike Sigliano.
I'll be right back.
And,
all right,
going.
And Ray Anthony Height and I were there, and we had our tables together. And
I wish someone had told me about it. I didn't know about this show.
He hasn't run it since, unfortunately. I think the last time it was 2019, and I drove there, and I had one of the best times. I wish I could get back to Chicago for a show. C2E2 is just too big for me at this point. I feel like I get lost in the shuffle. But something like Comic-Con Revolution, something like a Illinois State show, that might be something interesting, for me to check out.
Or
I
Cake,
just
Cake, the indie show that they do in June with all the zine publishers and independent comic people. Yeah, that's a great show. And my good friend Jeffrey Brown, the wonderful illustrator, he's there every year doing his stuff. Kari wants to point out the Boy Scouts, the volunteer at Terrificon in Connecticut, are great as well. Yeah, my buddy Steve is the scoutmaster that kind of is in charge of those kids, and they're very organized and helpful, 100%, man. And it's again, that's one of the good stories about the Boy Scouts that I am really glad. And Steve's a great guy, man, and I've really gotten to know him over the years at Terrificon and everything.
One more plug for my buddy Eric Bennett, who came on earlier. He's also a scoutmaster.
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah,
no,
works with kids, fantastic guy.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that there were so many bad stories about certain bad actors, and it's that's really a shame because really the Boy Scouts is such a great organization, and it really does teach good values and skills.
It goes back to what you guys were saying about punching down.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, there's very low hanging fruit that's very easy to ridicule or to emphasize the bad more than anything. But you got guys like Eric and your buddy Steve, those are, they're not a dime a dozen. There's probably more of them than there are of the other.
Completely agree, man. And it's a shame that the good actors get swept with the bad actors and stuff. Yeah. No, it's sick. It's wrong. So Vito, do you have any comics coming up? And again, I feel bad keeping you up.
Oh no. You're fine. I have God Quest milestone number 3 coming out soon.
Okay.
Probably should be ready by the time we get to Baltimore, I think, possibly. I'm working on a book called Pay the Devil with Steve Walker, which I previewed last year at Baltimore. Might be ready in time for Baltimore this year. It's very much up your alley, John. It really is. The way I kind of elevator pitch it is, what if Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees were Vietnam veterans?
Oh, interesting.
So it's a Vietnam vet coming back to exact revenge.
Wow.
Very grindhouse, very 1970s. Rolling Thunder is a big influence on it. And it's funny, we were talking about Quentin Tarantino. After I read Cinema Speculation, the idea came to me. So it's very much steeped in that 1970s kind of not exploitation films, but definitely grindhouse would be along those lines.
I'm with you.
And then Stray, we're working on Stray and the Golden Guard, which is my version of the JSA. We're hopefully going to finish that this year.
That's great, man. Well, seriously, when either the Stray book or the other book is ready, you got to come back. Let me know.
Let me tell you after today, like I like, it's funny you mentioned iFanboy and you mentioned Fanboy Radio, Scott, and like you guys were like kind of like the touchstones of podcast, comics podcast.
That means a lot.
When I was just starting to do comics, so I listened to all of you, and I was like, one of these days I'll get on to one of those, and I never got onto iFanboy except for on the video.
Okay, well,
they did talk about my couple of my books. The Fanboy Radio I used to call in, especially when Greg Rucka was on. Like,
sure,
because Greg and I we have this old relationship that stems from Jen confusing me for him at a convention because she tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Let's go."
Right from the back. I can see that. I get it.
So Greg and I, have been friends ever since. And so when he was on Family Radio, I call in and I, jag him about.
I love them both. They truly are among my Portland friends that I consider very close friends.
But like I said, this has been my like bucket list check off. Like you are my Rosetta Stone, I guess.
Thank you, brother. That's very kind. Well, seriously, you'll come back and we'll talk more.
I will.
We don't need Dean. The hell with Dean.
He's good for he's a good looking guy. He's good for.
He is. I know it's unfair, man. You're 58 and you look like that, Dean. Jesus, the hell.
Stop it.
That's Barbara Haspiel.
Because I have no responsibilities.
There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that. What
I blame Barbara.
What's coming up for you, Dino? You got any books coming up?
I did an 8-page AI Joe story, which is a new character for this Aerotech thing that I'm now writing a 10-page additional material for this series. But I've also written a year and a half ago, I wrote my next Kickstarter, which basically is, I guess I can kind of announce it here. I think I'm going to do it, which would be basically the next issue or the next story for COVID Cop. Because
sure. We talked about COVID Cop in the past. Absolutely.
I have some stuff that I think is still super relevant and a lot of fun.
I've seen the cover.
You've seen the cover.
It's amazing. Once that cover gets revealed, it's gonna
polarize people maybe because of the idea alone.
Are you eventually going to have? And I mentioned the crossover with Vito potentially, but with Red Hook and Stray. But are we ever going to see COVID Cop and Chestface and Billy Dogma all in the same?
I'm working toward an idea for that, and I will say this because COVID Cop takes place 10 years from now. In the new story I'm doing, the Red Hook does appear in the 10-year future version of himself.
Sure.
During this horrific meltdown of society in the world. So it's a lot of fun, and he does have a cameo in that. But so yeah, I'm working on that, and then because of the response to Chestface, I've actually started working on the next Chestface story that I want to do as well. It's absurd. It's all ridiculous.
That's what's great about it, man. Seriously, ladies and gentlemen, Chestface.
Chestface.
Sure.
I quit comics about 2.5 years ago, and this is what's happened to me. This is what happened to me when I quit comics.
We're glad you stuck around because it's a great idea.
But as a final question before I guess we wrap it up, I do have a question for you, and I have a caveat in my question. The question is this, and then I have a caveat. The question is, you clearly should write a comic book someday. What would that comic book be? And it can't be Wildcat.
And it's so funny that Vito is mentioning Wildcat because I do have a Wildcat idea. But and also, guys, if I could draw, I would have put out my comic book ideas years ago. Yeah, Vito is absolutely going to agrees, and that's all of much like you, Dean. All my friends are such great artists that are doing their own thing. It's like I can't bother you with my little bullshit idea, but I do have several, and also I even want to do short 10 or 20 page ideas because on Artist Alley,
like that series Solo that came
that
out.
Chiarello, that Chiarello used to art direct and edit and everything. Yeah. But honestly, my thought was because I over the years I met so many people in Artist Alley that had these great ambitious ideas. Oh well, how long is your story gonna be? Oh, it's 20 issues. It's like, all right, but you're not backed by a publisher. You're self-publishing. Good luck. I mean, that's a lot of work. And I mean, I have big ideas. There was a reporter for CBS Radio during World War II and in the immediate period afterwards, George Polk. And the Polk Award, which is a journalism award, was named after him. And they called him the first casualty of the Cold War because he was covering Turkey and Greece and discovered that the money that the Truman's administration and part of the Truman Doctrine to rebuild Greece, the money wasn't getting to the people. The people in charge of Greece were taking the money. And Polk was exposing it every week on the CBS World News Roundup, where Ed Murrow would be in New York. All right, let's go to Greece and talk to George Polk. Let's go to England and talk to Howard K. Smith. And he was killed. And he was killed by Greek nationalists that were sympathetic to the regime, but they blamed it on the communists. And it was this great story. And Polk and a guy from the military is like, that's not who killed him. And this Wild Bill Donovan, who was in charge of the OSS and became in charge of the CIA, told CBS and George Polk was murdered, but Howard K. Smith wouldn't let the story go, and all of his European correspondents were trying to find out what the deal was. And finally, Donovan came to Smith and CBS and said, "You guys got to drop this because we need Greece. Even these guys are assholes. It's them or the communists, and we got to go with them. So you got to lay off this story, or George isn't going to be the only dead reporter that is covering this." So that's my long 96-page graphic novel idea. But I also have short 10-page and 20-page ideas that I think would be fun stories. They're all period pieces because I can't help it. I think along those lines.
And it's funny because I assumed you were going to say like,
they're superheroes,
a franchise character.
No. I mean, I again, being a comic book fan as long as I was, and also being the age I was when things really exploded on the independent scene post-Image in the early 2000s. Guys like Jonathan Hickman's first story, The Nightly News, and some of the other stories when it's like, hey, you don't need superheroes. There's enough interesting stories. Yeah. And it's
absolutely.
Like, I mean, these are the ideas that if I were a movie maker or a television producer, they're the same kind of ideas I would go for and stuff. And yeah, I got a murder mystery where a nighttime jazz DJ is investigating the murder of a band member that was when bands would play clubs and you could make your own records and they would sell them after the show. I mean, as happens today with modern music bands and stuff. And yeah, but this is when they were still putting stuff on vinyl. And I had an idea like that. That's like a 10-page or 20-page idea.
But if I may, you're the same guy who can have this conversation and then talk about your original ideas or your love of history and how you would interpret a story. Yeah. That's not a franchise, but you dedicate so many podcasts to fixing Star Trek, to fixing Star Wars, to fixing Marvel. You're an entitled fan. You're an entitled fan, aren't you?
Well, I admit it, but I got, hey man, I've been literally, I don't remember stories back then. I've certainly watched them since, but I do remember being a 4-year-old kid in 1969 and my parents having Star Trek on the TV. And so when the syndicated reruns started, I was part of that first syndication generation. There you go, Dino Sante. Yep. He was too. And I'm sorry, man. They are, and I know the Star Wars fans feel this way about the new stories as well about their franchise. I'm sorry, they're missing the gestalt of what made Star Trek great. Star Trek has always been liberal and open-minded, but the politics were not ahead of the story. Right. And I really feel like today it's more of a lecture of this is the way it should be. Whereas, there's that great episode, The Private Little War, that was the analogy of Vietnam, and they presented both sides, and they really left it up to the audience. And I miss that.
To what you just said, to serve what you just said.
Sure,
I'll boil it down to this: it's essay versus story. Original Star Trek told stories.
Yes,
and a lot of new material. And there's a lot of great new material and more nuanced material than ever before. But there's a lot of material that feels like an essay. It feels like you're clobbering me over the head with your message, Yeah. And so it was less than back then. We had Maude with B. Arthur, that had hot topics, but they told stories.
Well, and they wrapped them around funny dialogue as well. And it was more.
They made it funny.
Yeah. There you go. There's Stray. Go ahead.
This is the Stray and Steel Wolf one shot from last year. Just want to show that
Excellent.
Eric Bennett wrote.
Very nice.
This is Golden Guard #1, which is let me pull that back. That's the Justice Society like team that I was.
Yeah. No, I'm a sucker for stories like that. Oh, and Chico Rico is like, don't spoil your stories, John. I'd buy this stuff. So that's very sweet, man. Yeah, and one day I'll find on DeviantArt or something an aspiring artist. And I've met a couple, and sadly they got their opportunities before I could get to them to do my stuff. And it's like, hey man, make your money. It's cool. I mean, this is just, Jimmy Jerkoff over here doing my little bullshit ideas and stuff. And I'm like, don't worry about it. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and it'll be fine. My stories will keep. So yeah, but I love it. I love what you guys do, and I admire.
I love what
it.
you do, and you have a podcast if you ever need to at least express your stories. So
well, and I even have a couple ideas both for audio drama and audio documentary that I would love to pursue. But I got to get sponsors for them. I have a couple real sports ideas that I'd love to do documentaries on. And it's like, no, this is too good of an idea to just throw it up there and, pray to the gods that enough people will watch it and listen to it and stuff. It's like, no, I'll find it. And even I want to do a Monkees documentary because my buddy interviewed all 4 of them when they were still living.
Wait, have you talked to Russ Kazmierzak?
I don't know, Russ. Tell me.
Russ Kazmierzak is the biggest Monkees fan. He's a cartoonist from Arizona.
Okay.
He's one of my favorite people. We actually had him on our podcast recently. Cool dude. He's someone you should talk to just about the Monkees for an hour and a half.
That'd be amazing.
And Arizona.
I'm gonna
hook him up with you. I'll have you guys talk.
I've because Alex Ross did those great Monkees pieces and everything, just posters. And I've talked about his love of the Monkees and stuff. And Segura as well when he did his Monkees Archies crossovers.
Right.
Oh, right.
And the guy I really want to get from Rhino Records. Oh God, he's got just like John, the Ferris Bueller director. Club.
Hughes.
Yeah, John, his name also is John Hughes. Massive comic book fan, but he was the music supervisor at Rhino Records when that Good Times 2015 album of the Monkees came out, where Death Cab for Cutie and the guys from XTC, Andy Partridge and Noel Gallagher wrote Monkey songs, new stuff for them to do. Great album. And they also made the Christmas album. And John was the music supervisor for the label. And I'm like, and I've tried like hell to get him on record. Right. And also, I mean, I wanted to talk to Nez and Mickey Dolenz, and Nez has passed away. Right. But I'm still trying to get Mickey because I know there's great stories. But yeah, in 2010, my buddy for a magazine called Goldmine Magazine did audio interviews with them. Now it was, and forgive me, Vito, I don't mean to keep you up, but they were audio interviews that he did, but he did them to transcribe into articles and interviews. Right. And also he didn't have like even a suction cup microphone to put on the phone. He literally like leaned his little micro cassette to an open phone, and he had central air going. So in the background, but with today's technology, what Peter Jackson used to clean up a lot of the audio from the Beatles. From the Beatles stuff. Well, I can use all that. And not only do I have the Monkees, but I also have Bobby Hart from Boyce and Hart, who wrote the Monkees theme and a lot of their original hits and everything. So I'm like these, and even Chip Douglas, that was his name, the record producer for a couple of the Monkees albums. So I've got all this stuff, and it's like, all right, that's a documentary, man. I'm like, we should do this. And I'm
actually going to write you an email. I'm going to write you and Russ Kazmierzak an email right now, so I don't forget, because you guys have got to talk Monkees. It's insane. And he'll send you some stuff. So I'm going to prepare that right now. All right, guys, let's we can wrap. Draw a comic you write if you want. Who's
B Things? Yeah, B Things is one of my regular viewers here on the chat, and he says, "I'll draw a comic you write if you want. I don't know if you care for my more cartoony art style, but I'd love to research and draw a period comic."
Cartoony art style is where I live, man. That's where I live.
Well, yeah, man, and John at wordballoon.com, and one of the guys one of my ideas does have a cartoony style. The only thing I'd ask B Things is for me to see your art, and I'll put in the chat everyone knows I always do make my email public. It's John at wordballoon.com, and I'm putting it in the chat right now as we're speaking. Right. And send me some art stuff, and maybe we can make something happen. That'd be great. So and there it is.
Monkees is monk with 2 E's and an S, right?
Well, and I even have a title, and I want to use that Monkees logo that was the guitar spelling out the Monkees.
Right.
But instead, I want to call it "We've Got Something to Say" because that was part of the theme song. We're the young generation, and we've got something to say. And I've got all of them. Yeah, and I've got them actually saying it. So I thought if that'd be guitar shaped and everything, that'd be a good logo for the podcast. So yeah,
I love it. Look at Vito's face. He's got to go to sleep. He buys.
Yeah. No. I'm so sorry, Vito. I don't mean to keep you up, man. Next time we'll do it earlier.
I was going to tell you that two of my kind of dream projects, kind of going along with what you were saying. One of them is the lost Marx Brothers movie called A Night at the Oscars that introduces a new Marx brother called Typo Marx. And I want Bobby Timoney to draw that so bad.
It's not Tito. Is that Tito Marx?
No,
like the Jacksons. Yeah, Tito.
Typo.
Jackson.
Did you know the woman that was taking care of Groucho in his later years, Erin Fleming, had the gall to call herself Flemmo? And it's like, first of all, maybe you should rethink that nickname, Flemmo. And but yeah, my God, what stories about her? Good, and she took her own life.
God.
Yeah, no, that's a weird woman and a very tragic woman. She's in the Woody Allen movie, Everything You Always Want to Know About Sex. She's the girl at the end where Tony Randall's the brain and Woody's the insecure sperm. She's the girl that is having sex as they're preparing to,
Flemmo.
Get down to business. Flemmo, everybody. Flemmo. Yep.
And on that note,
we can go. Absolutely. So once again, it is the Vito x Dino podcast. Check it out on YouTube. And is there an audio version or just the video version?
Yeah, the audio version's on Spotify every Thursday.
Cool.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Pocket Casts.
Beautiful, man. Well, thanks for everybody for watching and listening. Dino and Vito, thank you very much for being on. And Wednesday, I'll be talking to Don Simpson, another guy who's going to be at Ithacon. And don't forget, Dean will be at Ithacon this weekend at Ithaca College, and tickets are on sale at ithacon.org. We'll talk more about Ithacon and also Tom King tomorrow afternoon.
And Tom King, and talk to Don about what it's like being the Pittsburgh Godfather, because that dude is gangster.
He really is.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to talk Destroy and Megaton Man. I didn't know until talking to Mike Gold that he was one of the artists on Wasteland, the Del Close, John Ostrander horror book from the 80s. Yeah, and I'm actually getting images ready, and I'm going to hit him with them and go, tell me about your experience with Wasteland, because I've only talked to Mike and John about that. Wow. So all that and more this week on Word Balloon Live. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.